Get Gutsy, episode number 129 with Nikki Elledge Brown on Write Like You Speak. Welcome to Get Gutsy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennig, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. A cutting-edge show blending business and spirituality, Get Gutsy serves up a potent blend of stories, lessons, and tips to help you make a massive impact in the world through your soul's work and your inspired life. No more going it alone, no more excuses. The world needs more brave women saying yes to leadership. Are you with me? Good. Let's get gutsy now. Hey everybody, Jenny here. Welcome to Get Gutsy. I know for a lot of you, you are just regular listeners every week. You are waiting patiently yet urgently for who is up next. And today we have a very special guest. I just love it. I get the chance to have these conversations with people that I want to talk to anyway. And, maybe we've known each other online, but we've never really talked. And there's something really special when you can hear someone's voice and actually have a dialogue with them. So y'all are in for a treat today. We have Nikki Elledge Brown with us, and I've just admired her stuff from afar for quite some time. Her branding is gorgeous, photography top-notch, and her words are what she is known for. So let me tell you more about her. Nikki Elledge Brown is known online as the Communication Stylist, helping entrepreneurs communicate with clarity and confidence through her flagship program, A Course About Copy. She's a proud military spouse, former park ranger, which sounds really cool, college professor, and mom of two, sharing stories, tips, and inspiration on life, business, and all things communication over at her home base, NikkiElledgeBrown.com. And if you could use some refreshingly honest conversations on the realities of parenthood and entrepreneurship, myself included, in your life, check out Nikki's brand new podcast on iTunes called Naptime Empires. Welcome to Get Gutsy, Nikki.
Jenny, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this chat.
Yeah, for sure. And you live in one of my favorite states in this country of America called Hawaii, yes?
Yes, not for much longer, but yes.
Okay, cool. So you're right. Your husband is in the military. So when are y'all taking off to your next destination? Where are you going?
Well, that's actually probably my answer to your last question,
Ooh.
But we are headed to Texas, back to our home base this summer. So we've been out here for an average of, between the two of us, a decade. I've been out here just over 8.5 years by the time we leave, and then he's been here for almost 12 years now.
In Hawaii.
Yep. We're in Honolulu, or right. He's been stationed at Pearl Harbor pretty much his entire active duty career. So,
and so we can jump forward to the gutsiest move. So what's that? Why is that your gutsiest move, moving to Texas?
Yeah, he's getting out actually.
He's
shifting from active duty potentially to the reserves. We're not 100% sure yet, but either way, it's going to be time for me to be sugar mama and for me to step into the role with my business that I've been happily playing. It's been okay, great. Yeah, sure. It's just fun money, bonus money,
right.
We can save what I make. And now it's time, it's time to make it real. And so that he can be home and we can be together as opposed to apart, which he's been gone for a good chunk of the last 4 years on his sea tour. And so, we're ready for that.
Wow. That's definitely, a different kind of life. I'm sure some of our listeners also can relate, being military spouses or whatnot. One of my really good friends from college, also her husband is a military guy, and in 18 months he's out, he's done retiring, and they live in Virginia. She homeschools her 4 kids, and I actually homeschool my oldest son now. She was a big inspiration for me, but the root of her homeschooling was that they moved so much and they didn't want to be taking their kids in and out. But it's just not a world that I know much about because I'm not in that. So it's really interesting to have these conversations to learn, what would that be like to, have your spouse gone for periods of time, potentially in harm's way. I mean, how have you handled that?
Yeah. And he's a submarine guy. Mm-hmm. So as weird as that is, it's a reasonably, pretty safe place to be, even though it's weird because it's like a steel tube out in the middle of the ocean. I can't really let my mind go there. It's so
That's
weird.
Intense, just being underwater for like periods of time.
Faint of heart, that's for sure. So, yeah, and like out of communication. So that's the thing that's a bit different, you know, because even folks who have their spouses deployed somewhere where there's like an internet connection or phones, but like if you're out in the middle of the ocean, there's no communication. So for example, in 2015, was it 2015? Yes. So I got pregnant with our second son, literally TMI, the night Jeremy was about to leave.
You were like, we got a game on here, like game on.
Gift, right? And our surprise. And so I couldn't even tell Jeremy that I was pregnant till I was 9 weeks along because he left and then went straight out on mission. And so until he popped up in Malaysia 9 weeks later, and me and my oldest son were like, surprise! We had an ultrasound picture and everything. But he was like out of communication for over 90% of that six and a half month period. So it's different. You know, the submarine life is it's a really cool community. And that's kind of one of the things that is going to be hardest to adjust to, I guess, because we're used to it. This has become home. This has become our norm. I never imagined when we got married, I never thought we would actually stay out here and stay in the Navy, but we just kind of kept extending like the minimum amount of time each time. We'd be like, okay, maybe 1 more year. Okay, maybe 3 more years. Okay. So we just took it like bit by bit. And then next thing you know, we're here and it's 2017, which is crazy.
And it sounds like that next chapter is on the horizon, and then an evolution in your business. So take us back to your earlier times. You know, it sounds like you've had a lot of different jobs. You've had a lot of different hats that you've worn through the years. How have you evolved into what you're doing now as a communication stylist?
Yep. So my background is in communication studies. So literally the social science of how and why we communicate the way we do. So I got my bachelor's and master's degrees both from TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Go Frogs. And I taught communication at the college level throughout grad school and then after grad school. So that's like 2008. I love facilitating those light bulb moments, you know, so I would teach public speaking and interpersonal and intercultural communication. And I just love like totally geek out on that stuff. So I love helping other people get more confident, you know, just like you were saying in my bio, I've always loved helping people with that piece. So I knew when we were getting married, which was the fall of 2008, I knew I wanted to keep my finger on teaching when I moved out to Hawaii. So I started facilitating courses online for University of Phoenix just so that if I wanted to teach at a community college once I got out here, then I would still have that like continuous teaching experience.
Right.
Then when we moved out here, I actually worked at a technology marketing company in downtown Honolulu in a gorgeous office, but the job itself just was kind of soul sucking for me. Like I would cry probably at least once a week when I was driving in. I would feel nauseous most mornings, and I didn't really make the connection. I thought it was just like what I was having for breakfast. Like anyway, it was weird. Like, okay, maybe I'll just drink a breakfast instead. Maybe it's just not settling. But it was like inside sales where you're standing up all day and making cold calls and stuff. And I just missed connecting with people. Like I enjoyed my work, like colleagues, but the job itself, well, I quit actually 4 months in.
Wow.
In a really nice way. So he actually was like somehow I figured out a nice way to say I'd rather make no money than to continue making money doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And it was nice, again, communication stylist, that he was like, wait, I don't want you to leave. Let me create another position for you. So he, you know, created another position for me that was more in the back office. And I ended up staying there for a year. And then I was like, yeah, I just can't, because we thought maybe we were going to be leaving Hawaii. And I was like, I can't spend, if we only have a few months here. Again, we didn't need the money. It was just bonus. I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. So that's when I started volunteering at the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center, because I went to go there to visit when my sister was in town. I went on my 25th birthday. I met a Pearl Harbor survivor there, and I thought this would be a really cool place to volunteer, which is funny because history was my least favorite subject in school. I was great in school, like great grades, but history would always be the one where I would like, nope, I'm not taking the AP class for history because I'm not there.
That was a good choice because I took the AP history test. Not pretty. It was like, I mean, I feel bad because I did not apply myself in those classes, but I think part of it was it's a lot the teacher. If the teacher's not engaging and, if it's just more like you're trying to memorize dates, like that's what history felt like to me. I was like, okay, when did that thing happen? And I'm not already, like the numbers thing. Sometimes I'll transpose numbers. I'm like, wait, was it 75 or 57?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so I get it.
Yeah. Well, I was not. And it's funny because I have a couple of dear friends that worked with me and we're all around the same age and we all ended up being drawn to working at Pearl Harbor. And we're like, say what you want about Pearl Harbor, the movie, but Ben Affleck is responsible for a whole generation of people taking interest in Pearl Harbor and December 7th and the history that happened for World War II. But anyway, so I loved volunteering there, and eventually it became a job, full-time job. I ended up working there for 3 years, and I'm still there in spirit, in HD spirit, because I'm the giant 50-foot digital ranger that when almost visitors come see, then I'm the one who's saying welcome and asking you to sound cell phone and setting the tone for the visit and all that, which is fun. They call it my every 15 minutes of fame.
Every 15 minutes? That's cute.
363 days.
Nice.
Anyway, so I was doing that and loving it. And I call it paychecks of the heart. I wasn't making a lot of money, but I was happy. I was around people. It was so cool. It was the opposite of my other job because it was literally like you stand in one place and the world comes to you. You stand at the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center and the Arizona Memorial, and literally we had brochures in 31 different languages. Like I loved and got so much energy from actually being face to face and outside in the sunshine. And I started a blog actually with a picture from one of the days when I was working there, and I called it Stories from a Screensaver because I was like, literally my life is a screensaver. This is a beautiful place. Some people dream of coming here their whole lives, and I get to spend, 40 hours a week here and whatever. So I started that blog just for fun, and then ended up, when I was pregnant with Bryson, I was able to shift and work to part-time hours and mostly from home after that. So I had been shifting from the front lines to working more with like our scheduling education and school groups, working on our junior ranger program, updating our website, helping get social media plans in place and that kind of thing. So my work was shifting, which I was very grateful for because they didn't want to lose me and I didn't want to not be working with them. Like I enjoyed it, but I just couldn't be out there on the front lines all the time. So as that was shifting, I started my business at the beginning, mid-spring, I guess, of 2013. And it was also inspired by Jeremy's service because I chose my word of the year in 2013 as faith. Because to that point, he had been, since Bryson's birth, he had been on shore duty, which means he was home every day. But at this point in 2013, he was about to be moving to Connecticut for 7 months for training. And me and Bryson were going to be here, and I was like, I didn't want to totally lose all my marbles, so I knew it was time to get rooted in my faith, which wasn't going to change, like get anchored in, so that it wasn't just like, oh, I'm crazy. I could easily have been into that story, but I was not willing to do that. So I finally, Bryson was like 16 months or so at the time, and I finally started waking up before him as opposed to at the sound of the baby monitor, which was a huge shift. And I still am not quite at that point right now with Deacon, who's almost 14 months. I'm still not at the point where I'm waking up before him, but it makes such a world of a difference.
It really does.
And so that's when I started to notice what I call the divine breadcrumbs that had always been leading me to this path of sharing, connecting, storytelling, communication, sharing those gifts in a bigger way. And so that's when I started to just kind of see things differently. And I felt like it was a knock on the head, like, okay, I gave you these gifts. It's time to do something with them. And it felt like it wasn't an option to do something different, whether it was a different blog or a book or a business. It felt like it was an inevitability. And so that's when I started exploring and falling into this world of creating a business online and that kind of thing.
Love it. I love it. I love what you said. Divine breadcrumbs. That's rad. So what were those first steps that you started taking when you realized like, oh, wait, I think I can take all my stuff and go into business for myself? Like what, because I know a lot of our listeners are at that place. They're following those divine breadcrumbs and they're wondering, well, what do I do first?
Yeah, I was, just reading a lot and Googling a lot. And my cousin was telling me all about these people like Pat Flynn and Michael Hyatt, and I found Natalie McNeil. And I was just I had my ideas. It's funny because 4 years later, it's coming full circle because at the time I was making the list. I was like, do I want to do a different mom blog? Because I had stories from a screensaver, and those were some of the divine breadcrumbs because my friends and family would read these stories and be like, when are you going to write a book? I love everything that you write. You really have a gift and blah, 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 blah. And that was one of the things I was like, okay, right, this doesn't come naturally to everybody. So what am I going to do with it? So I was looking into writing a book, and I was like, okay, is it going to be about mom and career life, which again, ultimately is what Naptime Empires is about, right? Which is like that dynamic of having the work that you love and then also having the family that you love. And then who are you aside from all of that anyway? But then it's funny because I took the path of what everybody recommends, which is figure out what people will pay you for and start the business there. And I'm thankful I did, because that's part of my story, right? That's how I grew. That's, I became known for one thing, which is helping people with communication or helping entrepreneurs in particular. But years later, I'm in this phase of realizing like, oh, Nikki, you could have gone with your heart at the time, but it's okay. It's all happening as it should. But I kind of am leery of advising people in those early days, just because it's so valuable. And I mean, right from the jump, Jenny, it was like, seriously, I was in a few different groups of entrepreneurs online, and I could see they needed my help with communication. And so that's what I was offering, and I was glad to do it. And it took off like gangbusters, and I had over 21,000 in revenue within my first 6 weeks in business, which was, I didn't even have a website yet. I had just my splash page, but I was communicating and connecting with people in these Facebook groups and driving them back to my splash page and getting them on my email list, and then I was offering one-on-one sessions at the time. And so all of that revenue came from people who had signed up to work with me in like the May, June, July time period year. So it was crazy, and it was confirmation that I was like, yes, definitely meant to do something else. But it was kind of like, that's where the faith stopped, and where the like, okay, cool, thanks God I got it from here took over.
Got it.
I ended up in the next few years, I feel like I just sucked the fun right out of it. And that's where I'm getting back to that inspiration and noticing the divine breadcrumbs and being open to, even though I don't know what the revenue plan is yet, being open to following the alignment more than following what people want and need. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's huge. Following the alignment versus what people want and need. Because sometimes we follow what people want and need, we forget what we want and need.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, okay, yeah, I created this thing and people are buying it, and that's really awesome because the money's coming in and that's what business is. But then, and I've gone through that too, where the joy gets sucked out, and we turn into these machines. And like what you said, that connection to God is crucial, and God's source, universe, whatever we call it, whatever that is for us. But it's so challenging especially in the online space. It's freaking noisy out there. And you're like, okay, well, so-and-so is doing it like that, and I probably should do it like that too. And I should have a 10 pay versus a 7 pay, like there's all these things, and we get caught up. And then the joy can get sucked out. For many people, they get burned out. They have a health issue that comes up. I've had talked to people where their priorities got all screwed, and they aren't spending time, like they're working on weekends. They aren't there with their kids after school. And everybody has, different kind of home lives and desired lifestyles, but it's so important to get clear on that. And when we find that we come off track and just something feels off, even though it's like stuff can look fine, on the outside, we're like, the money's there. Like, why am I not happy? What's up? So how did you know that things needed to change?
I mean, I think a big shift, I know a big shift, and we live close to the airport, so you probably hear this jumbo jet flying over.
Nice.
I think that there was definitely a big shift when Deacon was born. So he was born December 30th of 2015. So, and I was super productive, like especially I call it my trimester of awesome, starting that June, where I started working with Todd Herman, and I was like, look, I could just ride off into the sunset. My husband's deployed. I'm starting my second trimester. I have a preschooler. Like, no one would fault me for that if I just wanted to cash in my chips and be like, peace out, see y'all in 2015.
Exactly.
But I didn't want to. I know that's still super loud. I didn't want to. So I just kind of doubled down, and I got really focused, and I had what I call my trimester of awesome, and blah, 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 and started Facebook ads and grew my list and got an assistant and all that stuff. And then I was still, and I make the joke where I'm like, at least Bryson had 18 months before I started my business. Deacon was practically born on a live webinar. But I was doing webinars. I was like 37 weeks pregnant, and I did a webinar, and it was great. It was great. I had 40 something people join a course about copy in like a 3-day span. And then I helped Todd promote 90 Day Year. And that was amazing. Like I had a 6-figure month, and then I had Deacon, and then it was so unexpected, but I feel like it was a postpartum depression for my business. Like I didn't have an issue bonding with him, thankfully. And I know that that's real, so I don't want to make light of postpartum depression at all. I think it's really important for people to talk about it. And I wasn't sure, but I honestly feel like 2016 in general was like a fog. And I know everybody had, hashtag all the memes for 2016.
2016 was a doozy for many of us, yes.
Yes, yeah. But I really felt that, and I felt it from the beginning, like early on, and it was unusual for me because that's not really my style to be like, what is going on? But I kind of felt like I was foggy and floundering, all the F words for 2016, where I just was like, I don't know. And Naptime Empires, it came into my mind. It wasn't something I was trying to brainstorm or think of, because literally the name came to me. It had to have been sometime in 2015 or 14, maybe even. I remember telling a friend, I was like, this name, Naptime Empires, just popped into my mind, and I didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
But I knew I wanted to kind of explore and play with it. So that was kind of the thing that kept me entertained in 2016, was just like floating ideas around with Naptime Empires. But when it came to A Course About Copy, I was just kind of like, I don't know, people. I feel like there's something more, and it's still available, and it's still helpful, and I still want to share it with people, because I do feel very passionate that the last thing people need to be doing right now is Googling 15 different ways or 50 different ways to write any particular page of their site. Like, it's an incredibly valuable resource and program, and I'm really proud of it and have several hundred happy customers and students. But it's not all. And I've known really since before I even created it that it wasn't all. It was just what people needed. And I talk a lot about the performing monkey syndrome, where it really is, you feel like when people are like, I don't know, survey your audience. And I get it. Of course. I mean, yes, that's important. It is a business. But if all we're doing is just asking each other, I don't know, what do you want? I don't know, what do you want? Then what are we? Like, we're literally taking orders.
Yes.
As opposed to actually just creating the thing that needs to be truly expressed from us. And so I don't know. I'm in an interesting, I call it biz puberty, because from the outside looking in, it does look like, okay, she's got her stuff together. And then from the back end, I'm like, I don't know, y'all. And I say that, actually. I say that all the time on the front end, but people still refuse to believe that I don't have my stuff together.
You're like, no, seriously. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm so glad you shared that. We do go through these evolutions, and this place where, yes, getting insight and feedback is important. My last corporate job was rooted in research. I produced conferences, and I had many conversations with corporate leaders about their biggest challenges and what would keep them up at night. So I was trained to ask questions and really listen for that qualitative response, right? And yet I am always struck by that Steve Jobs quote, like the one where it's like hard to get from your customers your next step when they can't even see it. Like, they don't see what you see. You are the visionary. And so if Apple would have just asked us, like, hey, would you want this iPhone thing? We'd be like, what? Like, we wouldn't even understand what they were talking about, because we couldn't even conceive that was possible, that we could have all this music in our pocket and basically our computer, like, in this small digital device. And so Steve Jobs was this maverick visionary. And I remember, because we used to invite Apple a lot to speak at our conferences, because, everyone just wanted to hear from Apple, and they usually would decline like every single invitation. But a big piece was like, they didn't really do research. Like, they honestly did not. They didn't need to hear from their customers what they wanted, because the customers didn't freaking know. And like, their job was to surprise and delight, was to be all these steps ahead and to see things that the customer base just couldn't see, but we're going to go crazy for when it was launched, because they're going to say, oh my gosh, how could you, like, we're so ready for that. So I think it's awesome where you are. And, that word that you had a few years ago, faith, really comes in handy now too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, because I was just listening to the membership economy the other day, and she mentions in there, she's like, okay, please don't, the Steve Jobs quote, everybody loves to use it. Please don't think that blah, 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 because 99% of people, that's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. However, I feel what I'm noticing from my perspective is that it's kind of like a pendulum, where I've gone from like, okay, F that, I don't want to ask people and just be taking orders and performing monkey, to I now feel like it's swinging back to the middle where I'm like, it is that co-creation and it is a dance. And so I'm like, okay, now as opposed to being like, no, I don't want to ask anybody anything. I'm like, I see it as there's a clue hiding for me in their feedback.
Yes.
So I'm excited because with the podcast, it was like, okay, what is Naptime Empires? Okay, it's a conversation. Okay, then we'll start a podcast. That's going to be the first thing. It's literally a conversation. Okay, now I've created the podcast. The next step is going to become visible to me in their feedback somewhere. It's like I'm mining for gold. So I am open to, when I ask people, like I have a free Facebook group at this moment for Naptime Empires, and I'll be like, okay, what do y'all think about this? Or what would you like about this? Da, da, da. And it's like, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to do anything with this, but I'm just looking. I'm looking to see if anything sparks.
Right. And it's being curious. I recently did that. We were working on a logo design I have a membership program and community, and we wanted to create these like really cool circular badges. And so I put up two options that my designer presented, and it was funny because it was almost like split down the middle with people like pink, no, the one with the star, and it's fun. To me, it's fascinating. It's just like human behavior. Let's see what happens here. And what resulted was that we kind of blended the two. I was like, you know what? Let's take the star from that one, make it smaller, put it at the bottom, and let's just create three that we can use in different capacities. Like it doesn't just have to be one. We could actually have three. They all have a similar look and feel, but different colors. And that happened through like that crowdsourcing. Just like, let's put it out there. Let's see what happens. And then let's evolve this. And everyone can feel like they have some say in it. Like it was a group effort, and it was fun. It was fun for me if it was like crappy for me. But y'all, everyone out there who just heads up, like when you do that, I wrote a book several years ago called Get Gutsy. And then that eventually led to this podcast, Get Gutsy. And the book that was just like an idea that wouldn't leave me alone. I had to do it. It was outside of me. It was bigger than me. And I remember when it came time to get our cover design nailed. Wow. Design gets some of the biggest feedback out there. Just so I want our listeners to know, if you guys ask those questions, you are going to get opinions very quickly. And so don't take anything personally, and simply just look at it all as like an observer, like a curious observer. Like, let me see. It's like a science project. You're running an experiment, and then from there you'll make decisions. So Nikki, because you've spent so much time as a communication stylist, and up to this point I've done so much around copy, and now you're really evolving into like this entrepreneurship and motherhood thing. What are some tips you could give our listeners around really just rocking it with how they are speaking and putting themselves out there from a communications perspective?
The biggest thing, and this is something that long before I started my business, like I said, I was helping people with at TCU, and then at the community college when I was teaching public speaking and everything. It's always been about knowing that you are enough. I mean, that's the ultimate like deep message, right? It's like you are enough. And so how that translates to your communication style is you don't have to pretend to speak a certain way in order to be taken seriously by the people who matter. And so I'm a proponent of conversational copy, and I use the term. So my course is called A Course About Copy, but it's a case of selling what they want, give them what they need, because I don't consider myself a copywriter, and I didn't know copywriting with the W was a word until a few months before I started my business. And I don't say that so that I can be like, oh, look at me, I'm so whatever. It's like, I'm not a student of this, like writing to persuade. That's not my jam. I want to help people present information in a clear, sincere way that makes sense and comes across to the receiver. Like that's my goal. And so I feel like when people build it up to be this thing that's separate from them, like, oh, copywriting, which again, there are things like if you're writing direct response, like, yes, there are certain tried and true practices, and then all the swipe files and all that. But that's not my perspective. That's not where I hear from. I just want to help people be themselves on purpose and rein it in a little bit, just so that that your message is heard, but that it's still your message, I guess. And so I like to help people realize that they can, and not only can they, it's their responsibility to show up as they actually are. And I like to say, in your copy in particular, it's your job to help your clients hear you before they hire you. And that's, I mean, my business is a testament to that, because like I was telling you about, when I had literally 100 people sign up to work with me that first summer, that was before I even had so much as a 30-second video on my site. I mean, the only video of me online at that time was my Pearl Harbor intro. So it was truly speaking to the power of sounding like you would actually speak in your copy. It helps people know, like, and trust you if you actually do that. And it's weird that it seems silly to be like, okay, right. Okay, why would it be hard for me to write like I speak? Why would it be hard for me to be myself in my writing? But it is, and that's fine, and you have to be patient with yourself. And it's weird to say, but it does take practice because we have conditioning from whether you were in a corporate job or your college writing class, or if you had a bad experience in school.
Yep.
Back in the day and someone told you weren't a good writer. Really, truly, folks who think that they're not good writers, it's funny when they actually have something they're passionate about and that they care about, it just flows. So that's the other piece of that puzzle. It's like, yeah, you could try to force it and say, yeah, you need to write a blog post that has 5 helpful tips and whatever. But if you find yourself feeling like a performing monkey, of course you're going to feel blocked. Whereas if you're sharing what's on your heart or what you care about or what you're noticing, it's from your experience, it's going to be 100 times easier.
Absolutely. And I think you're so right about the conditioning from school, parents, just people who have, through your life maybe felt like they knew more than you. And so we sit down and that, I know for me, because I do love to write, and still, even with all the practice, I've written a book, I write a freaking lot in my business, and I'll have these phrases that just come through me. I'm like, yeah. And then like the editing just will come in. I'm like, wait, no, I should change that. Can I really say that? And it's like, no, you say the thing that you want to say. If you, in that voice of yours is saying, I've got you, babe, then like that, say it, and don't worry that some people are going to hate that you said babe, but others are like, oh my God, I love that. I call my people babe or whatever. And so we have to be willing to lose some people, like piss some people off, or just like have them tune out because they're not receptive to our message. For me, I stopped reading reviews a long time ago, but when my book first came out, I was like obsessed with reading reviews. And then I read one who she really didn't like what she called like my Valley Girl sing-song way of talking or something like that. And then I just thought, well, then they're not my person. They're not that person that I'm meant to help, and that's okay. So all you listeners out there, just do you. As you said, Nikki, you are enough. That's such a great tip.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to say. Like, it's easy to say, harder to integrate into actually believing and being okay with it. But truly, I mean, this is a journey I'm on right now, is just realizing, because like I'm a former prom queen, class favorite kind of girl. Like, I'm used to everybody, like, nice girl Nikki and whatever. It's not like I have anything wildly controversial to say or anything, but I'm just coming to realize, like, it's okay if I say something that people disagree with. Yes. And I'm also trying to let go of like the need to be right or to always say something that's not going to offend other people, and think of things from a squillion different angles before I say anything, because it's making me put a muzzle on myself.
Yes.
What's that for? That's no good for anybody. So it's definitely, I tend to attract people who are recovering perfectionists as well. And that's why one of the biggest things that I've said that has stuck with people the most over the years is it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be shared. Because people come to me thinking, oh, I need to write this and it needs to be perfect and I need to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, ultimately those are the 2 big messages of A Course About Copy. Number 1, you are enough just as you are. And number 2, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be shared. And truly, even though that's normally my default, which would be to like overanalyze and try to get everything right before I put it out there, that's exactly what I didn't do with my business, which is exactly why it took off so dang quickly, because I wasn't in my way. I also had zero expectation of it. And I do think that was my advantage in the early day. Like I had no expectations or thoughts. I thought it'd be cool to make $20,000 in a year, because then at the time I was like, I'm going to give 10%, we're going to fund a well and blah, blah, blah. And instead it took less than 2 months. But if I would have known or had that expectation and put the pressure on myself like I do now, then I wouldn't have been able to do it, But now I'm like, oh, now I know I'm capable of that. Now I know I can have a 6-figure month. Now I know I can blah, blah, blah. And that's, again, when the sucking the fun comes right out of it, and the vibe drops below sea level. And that's not a good place to be.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Drops below sea level. I'm so with you there. That's the challenge. I think that's the spiritual quest. That's my fascination with entrepreneurship being a catalyst for spiritual growth and vice versa, that we do this stuff to ourselves. Like, we find ourselves in these positions, like some things work, some things freaking don't. And we can't, I don't care how smart we are, how long we've been doing this thing, how nice we've been, we're doing, wonderful things with our family or what have you. Like, there's just some things that you just miss the mark. And then others, it's a grand slam. And what I've really had to practice is that no matter what, I am enough, and I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And at the end of the day, the opinions who really matter to me is my family. Like, that's it. That's what it comes back to. There are going to be people who don't like what I'm doing. There's days that I'm frustrated with myself, but when I can extend grace and then know that my kids don't freaking care, like how many people signed up for this or what happened in there, they're just like, the thing that it's funny, my son is obsessed when he'll sometimes pop in when I'm doing these live streams, and I'm homeschooling him now, which is quite a journey, and he's obsessed with emojis, which sometimes he forgets what they're called, and he's like, what are those things, origamis? Like, he's like, send them emojis, but I'm explaining to him too, it's okay if we don't get any emojis. Like, I don't want you to be and I think that's a great lesson for our listeners to know, that no matter how many emojis you get, how many likes you get on something, how much money comes in the door, how many people sign up for your blah blah, like, you are enough, and you've got to really grasp that on a deep level, because this entrepreneurship road, I mean, there are twists and turns, and like what you're experiencing, Nikki, is like, you have this great success, and then you realize, like, there's more. There's more, and you have to give yourself some space and some faith that you'll get there with time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lesson to keep learning. And it's so funny to me how I'm like, how many humans are going to have to come deliver this message so directly and clearly to me that my worth is not tied to my revenue, because I keep getting invited on these amazing adventures with these people who, on paper right now, their businesses, like, I know for sure I'm going to have a multi-million-dollar business. Like, that's not a doubt in my mind. I know it's going to happen, but I know I'm just not in the place right now where I have the pieces together. Like, I know that it's going to happen, but it's not there yet. And so I tend to want to exclude myself and be like, well, but that's not my party. Like, I don't deserve to be at that party. But then people keep inviting to be like, no, we want you at this event. We want you at this experience because you bring this value to the table. And it has nothing to do with what my profit and loss statement says.
Yes.
And it's like, it's so easy. Again, that's not how I was. Back in the day, I was super happy and joyful in my park days, in my paycheck of the heart. I was fine with that. And then I started my business and had that early, quick success, over $100,000 in the first 10 months. And then it was like, okay, right, now the pressure's on.
Yes.
And then I started to lose my own identity, getting tangled up in how much money am I making. Mm-hmm. And that is not, I mean, yes, I want to make a lot of money. I love money. It's great. And I love giving money too, but but that's not it. That's not all there is. And I just totally got swept up in that and was way too hard on myself, especially in 2016, just way too hard on myself, looking back and realizing, like, still having a multiple six-figure year, considering my husband was still gone and we had a new baby and all of this. It's like, Nikki, let's chill out a little bit.
Yeah, girl.
Back 16, Nikki, and be like, oh my gosh, you're a freaking rock star. Like, especially with Valentine's today, as we're recording this on Valentine's Day, I'm looking back at 2016 me and remembering that, like, I had taken Deacon probably for the first time to the commissary, to the grocery store, and I had grabbed some, like, individually wrapped Rice Krispie treats at the last minute, like, right, there's like the aisle of stuff right before you check out at the grocery store just to grab. And so I was like, let me get these just in case we don't find a better Valentine that, like, Bryson would really love to take to his class. And then sure enough, the morning of Valentine's Day, I was like, oh crap, it's Valentine's Day and I haven't done anything. So I'm like grabbing a Sharpie and signing Bryson all over. So I was really proud of myself today, realizing, like, I was hard on her last year for doing that, but that was freaking amazing that 2016 Nikki was able to pull it together with her deployed husband and her newborn baby, and Sharpie on the Rice Krispie treats was more than enough.
Yes, exactly. And we can just trust that we don't have to be, you can be your own version of super mom, and it doesn't need to be that, you're killing yourself in the name of whatever. Because for a lot of us, it's like our kids, like, that's not what they care about. That's not what they're going to remember. And when we just take that moment to say, what do you need right now? And, like, what do you really want? For a lot of us, our kids just want to they just want to hang out. They want us to see them and play with them and get down on the floor and all that. And I just your story about remembering that the money is great, and in business we do need to bring money in, and that's important, and it's not everything. And I've come to that place over and over again in my business. And my last corporate job, it was very lucrative. I didn't leave that because I wasn't making money. I was making more money than I ever thought I would make, and yet it was hollow. Like, I reached that point then where I said, I don't care. Like, I remember my boss saying, we just bought this new business and you're going to lead it up and there's going to be so much more money. And I remember at the moment I was like, I don't care. And it freaked me out because I was supposed to care, and I did not care. And yet now I'm in work that I love, and yes, the money is there, but it's work, and I have 3 kids. And so it's figuring out like what season I'm in right now, and that I am not sprinting. Like, I am not trying to sprint to some imaginary finish line. Like, I want to be in this season. My kids are only young for a period of time. Right now I'm homeschooling my oldest kid. Like, we'll see what happens with the other ones. And this is where I am. And I'm going to trust that. And in 20 years, when things are different, like, my business is going to look different then too. But I'm not going to regret this time. Like, that is just what I come back to over and over and over again. I'm making choices, you're making choices, and we are good, awesome people, no matter, what the line item says. And that I love what you said about, those invitations are coming in, and that people can love us for us, regardless of, like, are we multiple millions or multiple thises or blah, blah, blahs. It's like, if you're just being awesome, like just being who you are, then that's enough.
And it takes other humans to reflect that back to us. And I do think it's absolutely amazing. And I love and would love to pick your brain more on the homeschooling thing too. Because part of me is like, wait a minute, we're building all this and like Jeremy's getting out so that we can have, and I'm like, but then we're just going to be stuck because of school absences forever. Like,
exactly. We'd love to chat with you about that. And if you need guests for your podcast, I'd be happy to come on. And, the homeschooling adventure is a relatively new thing for us, brought on by a curveball. Like, I was not that mom who was like, I'm going to be a homeschooler. And now we found ourselves here. And I am honestly like thanking God, like, thank you. Thank you for showing me this world that I did not know I would go into. And wow, it's just, and so that's another big lesson is like when we're hit with these curveballs. Like, actually a name of a blog post or name of something came into my mind a couple weeks ago that was like, my biggest challenge gave me my life back. Yeah. Like, that's what it was, because I realized I was hustling so hard. My kids they went to private school, and it was not free. And so you're hustling so hard to like pay for this stuff and do this stuff. And so like the time that was left over to be with my kids, I was depleted. I was freaking tired, and I was putting all this pressure on myself to be able to, pay for this life, and realizing that it was taking a lot of our life. And I'm just grateful for everything kind of getting like recalibrated and trusting that, the universe has our backs. And when things like when you kind of fall off course, there will be something that will get you back on to where you're supposed to go. Absolutely. So Nikki, I know our listeners are going to want to find you and, just get into your world. They can obviously go to your podcast, Naptime Empires, on iTunes. Where else can they go to find you?
Yep. So home base, and honestly, I haven't even updated it to even mention that Naptime Empires is live, but home base is NikkiElledgeBrown.com. If you want to go straight into the nitty gritty copywriting tips and such, and just the communication side, then you can go through the A Course About Copy.com door. And then Naptime Empires is the home base for the podcast and all those conversations there. Currently revamping the whole subscriber experience, as I call it, for a choose your own adventure, depending on which door people are choosing to go into. So.
Yeah, I know. There's always stuff to do, isn't there, in business? Yeah. Like, I want to do that, and it'll get there. But it's prioritizing. It's really saying, what bandwidth do I have right now? What is the most pressing thing that's going to result, to have really great results, and it's going to be fun for me, and enjoyable, and just going for it. Well, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I wish you all the luck and love in the world, and your gutsy move coming up, moving back to Texas. I like Texas quite a bit. It's a great state.
Yeah, it's literally a gutsy move. It's literally a move.
It is a gutsy move. And, there's just a lot of great energy when I go to Texas. Like, I have actually 2 cousins who live in Texas, come to think of it. And when I go to that state, like, there's just something about Texas that gets into my heart.
Yes. Well, I I'm very thankful to now feel like we have home on both sides of the rainbow. So we will be back to visit Hawaii, and we will be thankful to have our home base in Houston too.
Good stuff. Well, enjoy all the good stuff that is coming your way in 2017 and everything that you're creating. All you listeners out there, thanks so much for tuning in. I know you got some huge value from this, and I look forward to seeing your work out there where you really are trusting that inner voice and sharing it with your people. This is Jenny Fennig sending you so much love, light, and faith as you get gutsy. I will see you next time.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Get Gutsy with Jenny Fennig. Gutsy leaders unite and ignite.